The idea was first put forward late last year, and then a fatal fire in the suburb on Easter Sunday, which claimed the life of teenager Melody McDonald, gave the project added impetus. There's talk that many councils will begin insisting on smoke detectors in all new houses, but the Stockton move is to have them fitted everywhere, particularly where householders can't do it themselves.
We've even had cases of old pensioners their kids are giving them smoke detectors and they're in the drawer. Haven't installed them. They can't climb the ladder to put them in.
The local fire brigade is happy to be involved, taking delivery of the first 150 detectors purchased by the Prawners Club and providing an officer for each of the 6 teams that will begin installing the devices from next weekend.
Make the people aware of the instructions on the packet and that they're fully conversant with the use and their responsibilities when the detector, if it does activate, what they should do.
And the program won't end there, with the service clubs to provide new batteries in 9 months' time and ongoing backup for anyone needing help. The detectors themselves are very simple. Attached high in a hallway, they emit a piercing beep sufficient to wake up the heaviest sleeper when any smoke is present.
It's a big project. There's 1,900 homes in Stockton and we hope to do it. If possible, we can get 2 in, but we're going to try at least for 1.
Two-year-old Jared Ting and 4-year-old Caroline Milton died when flames engulfed part of the Milton family home in the Newcastle suburb of Waratah last November. Party for a friend, Mrs. Catherine Smith, when the fire started. Many of the guests had been drinking alcohol and smoking. Caroline's mother told police she believed Mrs. Smith may have dropped a cigarette in the children's bedroom. In court today, Catherine Smith admitted she had been drinking and had dropped a cigarette in the lounge room earlier in the afternoon, but denied having anything to do with the fire. Caroline's mother stormed out of the court, accusing Mrs. Smith of lying. The police and the coroner said the allegation had not been proved. The coroner found that the most likely cause of the fire was that the children accidentally started it while playing with a cigarette lighter. However, he says other causes cannot be ruled out. The fire started in a bedroom cupboard. It's believed that when the children opened the door, the fire burst forward, burning them. Instead of calling for help, they ran upstairs to another room where they were overcome by smoke. Detective Cox said he believed the children had not sounded a warning because they feared reprisals. On leaving the court, Jared Ting's mother denied her son could have been involved. Mrs. Milton was just relieved the hearing was over. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
This is the incident yesterday in which Cameron Blair was seriously injured. Side on, it's difficult to see, but from this angle, the elbow of Newcastle's Paul Harrigan can be seen to come down on Blair's throat. Blair's larynx was damaged in the tackle. He was stretchered from the field and taken to the intensive care unit of John Hunter Hospital. This morning, his condition had improved enough for him to be moved to a general ward. According to doctors, the thyroid cartilage which shields the vocal passage was fractured in the incident. While Cameron was in good spirits today, he could only communicate with staff and visitors through pen and paper. He's been advised not to talk, and according to a hospital spokesman, it's not known whether his voice will be permanently damaged. In a handwritten note, Cameron asked us to thank all those people who have contacted his club in Sydney and the hospital. He said, "This will only strengthen my resolve to come back as soon as possible to help my friends do battle. And yes, I will be back." Parramatta officials have stressed that Harrigan's elbow was unintentional.
The 81-74 win over Canberra at the Palace on Saturday night may mark a turnaround for the Falcons. With 6 new players introduced at the start of the year, Coach Tom Wisman believes they're all beginning to gel.
We're very happy with the defensive performance as a team on Saturday night. They took it to heart. You know, we had to. We said we were focusing defensively. We made the changes, and really the players as a group got focused and showed what they can do defensively.
The Falcons now have a 3-win, 4-loss record, putting them 10th on the National Basketball League ladder, a long way down from the top 4 position where Wisman predicted his team would be.
We feel that we've had a bad start, let ourselves down somewhat, but again, as coaches, we have to have patience with the number of new players in the team. It's going to take a while. If it doesn't come together right away, we still have our sights firmly set on the top 4.
Wisman is expected to retain the same lineup from Saturday night in this weekend's game against the Gold Coast at Newcastle Entertainment Centre.
In January, the Warner Vale Bushfire Brigade helped to fight blazes in its own backyard, as well as Lake Macquarie in Gosford. Along with other crews, its 20 members saved homes and lives. But those valiant efforts mustn't have been enough for one person in the area. Last night, an arsonist broke into the Warner Vale Bushfire Station and set it alight. Unfortunately, this was one building the brigade couldn't save. The firefighters were clearly upset and angry this morning as they inspected what was left of the station they had built just a few years ago.
It's indescribable, actually, to think that you lay your life on the line for the public and they turn around and do this to you.
Pretty devastating. We've put a lot of work into it, as you can imagine. A lot of our own money and a lot of public money, a lot of council money, and it's all gone up in smoke virtually.
Somebody's obviously got a psychological problem, I would suggest, to do this to a community-based organisation.
The building will have to be bulldozed after the heat of the fire warped the roof and cracked the walls. Insurance will pay for a new building, but it won't cover the $110,000 needed to replace the tanker. Another engine was saved, but the mementos that made this station a second home for many of its men have been lost forever. The crew says it wasn't beaten by the bushfires, and it won't be beaten by this.
We'll build ourselves up again and go again. There's plenty of morale in Warner Vale.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
When Newcastle was hit by the earthquake in December 1989, Mary Ironman was playing the poker machines in the Workers' Club. The building collapsed, burying her below the rubble. A poker machine fell on top of her, pinning her to the ground.
With that, down came the walls. Everything went black, a huge bang. There we were, we didn't know what was going on.
Mary was rescued but suffered a number of injuries. It's been more than 4 years and Mary's case is still going through the courts. During a recent Supreme Court hearing, the judge urged the lawyers acting in the case for the 13 people suing the Workers' Club to fast-track the legal proceedings.
It's just one big drag, and it's not doing any of us any good.
The Attorney-General has acknowledged there are delays with other court cases and says the appointment of acting judges will help clear the backlog. However, one legal source says 2 to 3 year delays in civil cases are often due to the need for victims' injuries to become stabilised before claims are launched.
Recycling bottles and paper has become part of everyday life for many people in the Hunter. Water is seen as the next step in reusing our resources.
There's a growing interest around the world in the whole concept of recycling. Wherever water is scarce, using second-hand water makes very good sense. And environmentally, it's quite good often if you can recycle water and prevent water from being discharged into the environment.
A 2-day conference in Newcastle has drawn experts from Australia and overseas. They're suggesting new ways our water can be used, which includes recycling sewage. It's already filtrated to a standard where it can be discharged into rivers or the ocean. Authorities say the next obvious step is the release of the filtrated waste for residential use.
But if you take this recycling to a logical end conclusion, you could actually purify it to the point where you could drink the water.
Treated water would be pumped back into dams and reservoirs, eventually being used for domestic use. Hunter Water is already doing this on a small scale.
What Hunter Water Corporation is doing in some areas is it's injecting purified wastewater into the groundwater aquifers, and that does a dual purpose. One thing it does is it prevents seawater from intruding and making the groundwater salty, and the other thing it does is it augments the groundwater supply.
A Raring power station has also joined the water recyclers. It signed a contract with Hunter Water to use the excess from the Dora Creek sewage plant. This will save 4 megalitres of water being drawn daily from Lake Macquarie.
The meeting at Cardiff Workers Club showed rousing support for the fight against drugs such as marijuana. Around 500 people concerned about their children's future.
It's a crisis, it's an epidemic at the present time.
Psychiatrist Dr. Graham Vickery believes using marijuana can affect the brain, leading to psychiatric problems. He says its use is rife in our schools.
Already we know that approximately half the number of students in schools are using it.
Magistrate Cole Elliott made national headlines in February when, in summing up a case, he said marijuana had contributed to the suicide of Nelson Bay man Adam Reid. Last night, Mr. Elliott said the drug affected not only the user, but also people around them. He used the example of driving cars under the influence of the drug, threatening others on the roads.
It's to me about time that the voices of the concerned parents were heard from where they deserve to be. That is, from the moral high ground.
Speakers spoke of the threat of decriminalising marijuana, saying that wasn't the answer. Dr. Vickery believes education is the way, calling on all parents and teachers to appreciate there is a problem and to fight it.
At times, the dust, fumes and smell of the BHP Mayfield operation have been as vivid an image of the company as the steel it produces. But BHP as a polluter is an image the big Australian is trying to change. It will inject $18 million to improve its pollution record, which will include $7 million on dust controls on No. 4 blast furnace, $2 million to reduce dust and odour emissions from coke oven doors, $2 million to reduce the amount of ammonia and tar used in coke ovens, and another $2 million for a biological treatment plant to remove traces of contaminants. The company says the improvements are part of an ongoing program, not a knee-jerk reaction to complaints from the community. However, the Environmental Protection Authority is still getting 6 complaints a week about pollution caused by BHP, and that doesn't include people who phone the company directly.
We do receive complaints from people, we investigate all those complaints, and rectify them if they're a problem on this site.
But the company admits it'll be at least 6 years before the Mayfield plant reaches ideal environmental controls by world standards. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
A preliminary deal between Macloy Proprietary Limited and Lake Macquarie Council was reached last December. It involved Macloy's handing over part of the lakefront site for parkland in return for a smaller residential development, a financial package and other land. The finer points of that agreement have now been worked out. Mayor John Kilpatrick has refused to reveal the details, but it is known the city will get around 164 hectares for parkland. That includes the 40 hectares already owned by the city.
There will be more foreshore land, which has been indicated. The site, the retirement village site at Valentine will no longer proceed. That will now be parkland, and a very lovely part of the foreshore to be kept as parkland.
While Mayor Kilpatrick is pleased with the agreement, it has been achieved at a price, the exact amount unknown.
There are contras, but I think they more than outweigh the extra parkland and the more valuable foreshore land that we have managed to keep.
Also determined, the land council will give Macloy's. It's believed to be located at Valentine. Company head Jeff Macloy says he's generally pleased with the compromise that has been reached with council. However, he too wouldn't elaborate on the details. He said it has been so long in coming, he doesn't want to jeopardise the deal before it's ratified by council toward the end of the month. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Labouring day and night to finish a job isn't new to humanity. Noah did it, the Beatles wrote about it, and now 3 local artists have decided to jump on the bandwagon. For the next 9 days and nights, artists Pauline Tickner, Luke Beasley and Scott Carey will literally be on show in the Lake Macquarie Gallery.
I think it's a great opportunity for people in the community to be able to come in and see artists actually working. Most people see exhibitions when everything's polished up and framed and finished, and they don't really get a feel for the process that the artists go through.
And the range of work is diverse. Scott Carey is producing a series of large drawings, his creations featuring various types of remains. Luke Beasley is using enamels and acrylics in his move from figurative to abstract work, while Pauline Tickner's acrylic paintings and drawings are influenced by her travels through South America.
People can come along from today to talk to the artists and watch them work. At 3 p.m. on Sunday the 29th, we're holding a celebration for the completion of the work, and everyone will be able to view what's been produced while the artists have been here for this project.
It was an important game for both teams, a win keeping them in touch with the top 8. The Rollers fired early, Mitchell shooting from wide out, and a handy lead. Gold Coast was in there fighting for every point. Newcastle keeping in touch with some fine skills. Rollers star Tony D'Ambrosis was dominating the court, but Falcons top gun Derek Rucker wasn't taking a back seat. With Kruger, he was making it a real battle. And indeed it was. The game seesawed with the Falcons leading 49-41 at the end of the second quarter. Into the third quarter and just 1 point separated the teams. Gold Coast took their chances. Tony D'Ambrosis top scoring with 30 points. Reese landed 23. Rucker shined for the Falcons with 29. Johnson 19. The final score, Gold Coast 100, Newcastle 97. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The Royal Military College Band, based at Duntroon in Canberra, usually plays at official government functions. However, in a rare trip north, the band has spent the week entertaining crowds at Kempsey, Coffs Harbour, and yesterday evening at Casa Grain Winery in Port Macquarie. The band showed off its versatility, playing jazz, classical and pop.
It was a case of the one that got away, some simple errors that left the Knights licking their wounds.
When we had to control the game and put it beyond doubt, we just didn't do that.
The 12-10 loss was a lethal blow. The Knights have played brilliantly in recent weeks. They ran in a cricket score against Parramatta. With the rundown to the semis, a loss to lowly ranked Gold Coast could be costly.
You know, I said after the game it's probably the most disappointing game that I've been involved with here in 7 years.
More positive news today with the announcement of a new principal sponsor for the club. Tube Makers has signed on for a year. Still no word on a major sponsor, but the club is speaking with several well-known companies.
I would like to think that we're in a position to announce a major sponsor by the end of the season, absolutely. It's our objective too, yes.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The Pacific Highway at O'Sullivan's Gap north of Bulahdelah was closed for more than 24 hours in October 1990. A semi-trailer had lost its load of pesticides and poisons. Several people were injured in other vehicles, and 10-year-old Barry James O'Shaughnessy died after the accident. Firemen needed to wear protective clothing and breathing apparatus to clear the road. Today, Kempsey truck driver 43-year-old Philip Charles Clout appeared in Newcastle District Court charged with culpable driving causing grievous bodily harm and death. Philip Clout had been driving his prime mover north along the Pacific Highway. He says it was just a normal trip down the mountain until he heard a noise coming from the back of the trailer. He says his truck was out of control. He tried to pull it to the left, but it flipped over and skidded. Clout says he had no idea there were other vehicles involved. He was told people were trapped in a car up the hill. When he went to look, he noticed the drums were scattered up the highway about 200 metres. The case will continue tomorrow. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
"23-year-old Kathy Marnie has been blind since birth. A communications student at Newcastle University, she's found the task of researching and reference finding at the library harder than most.
That takes everybody a long time, and when you have to have a fair bit of assistance to go through all those steps, it takes a lot longer. So it just means that you've got to put a fair bit more time into your studies, I think.
With the help of a range of devices like the ZoomText magnifying system, Kathy and around 140 other disabled students are now able to get quick access to information.
Well, people with learning disabilities will benefit. Some of the technology in this centre is very useful if you have a learning disability. Also, students with manipulative impairments who have difficulties turning pages and carrying out other research duties will benefit.
Proceeds from 2 university rock concerts helped fund the Adaptive Technology Centre, an invaluable resource that may encourage others to further their learning.
We know there's a lot more students out there who may require assistance, and we're really hoping that now the centre is up and running, that perhaps particularly prospective students who might have ruled out tertiary education now think, well, it's a possibility.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. Despite a few technical hiccups causing a number of delays, today's final dress rehearsal went almost according to plan.
A very long rehearsal today. We had to get it right, which meant 6.5 hours to get it right.
Under the spotlight at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre tonight, a 500-voice choir will be joined on stage by another 2,000 performers from more than 100 schools across the Hunter. There are only 3 evening shows and 1 matinee. Most of the tickets have already been sold. The event has taken 9 months to organise, and the producer is a touch nervous about the curtain call.
Tense. Excited. No, I'm very, very excited. Very, very tired, but I look around at the children and I know that a little 5-year-old is a lot tireder than I am, and he just keeps going and buzzing around. So there's some really good at the end of this.
They have volunteered their time and effort for half a year. Today they were given due recognition for all that hard work. The 50 trainees were selected for the scheme from among thousands of Newcastle's unemployed by the Department of Employment, Education and Training. The aim was to green the city while teaching the youngsters the basics of horticulture. The teenagers work for 4 environment groups, with the Newcastle for Trees class planting more than 6,000 trees in 6 months. The trainees also helped to rejuvenate degraded areas, helped to address pollution problems at Throsby Creek and built an environment-friendly house. All along the way learning essential skills needed to get a job, as well as a certificate to show what they can do.
They have learned a lot of self-discipline and they've learned a lot of skills that they wouldn't ordinarily have done, and they've effectively developed themselves to the point where they don't want to go back onto the dole. They're keen to get work now.
A lot of conservation skills and native plant propagation, everything to do with the environment and the catchment, and also a lot about teamwork and effort and responsibility.
The annual triathlon is one of the biggest tourist enticements for the region and has been hosted by Foster since it began in 1985. It attracts people from 23 countries, with highlights of the event shown right around the world. It is also a major boost to the local economy.
It has an enormous value in the sense that, in economic senses, it's worth $3 million approximately to the local economy during the period that the triathlon's held. But more importantly, on a tourist aspect, then putting Foster Tuncurry on the international calendar.
But now this is being threatened, with rumours circulating that the event may be taken away from Foster and handed to another state, possibly Queensland or the ACT. Mr Turner alerted State Minister for Sport and Recreation Chris Downey, who has thrown his weight behind the effort to make sure the triathlon stays put.
The Minister immediately offered state government support and wrote to the International Triathlon Committee in Florida indicating state government's support for the retention of the triathlon in the Foster Tuncurry region.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
It's less than a week to winter, but the region is under a fire threat. Unseasonal weather, especially in the upper Hunter, has left pasture and bushland tinder dry. And with winds topping 60 kilometres an hour, bushfire services are calling for care. A total fire ban has been enforced for the Hunter and Central Tablelands. People in other regions have been asked to be wary. And it appears there'll be little time for anyone to relax, at least for the next few days, with strong winds predicted till the weekend. Meanwhile, one of the small communities to survive the dramatic January bushfires is planning ahead to stop the next blaze. The township of Seahampton pulled together through the tragedy, locals like Val Dennis fighting to save their homes and caring for those who came to their aid. Having seen what volunteers can achieve, the town has established a brigade of its own. Late this afternoon, a new four-wheel drive striker unit was passed on to the Seahampton residents. With a diesel pump and 180 litre capacity, it's designed to kill fires before they get out of control.
Means that we're that much closer up this side of Lake Macquarie up towards Sugarloaf. Killingworth's our nearest other bushfire brigade, and they're a bit away. So yeah, it'll be real good.